Okay, great. I can't wait to check out the sequel to Condemned. I bet they really honed in the atmosphere. I bet they locked in their story and the gameplay. Oh man, oh, oh my god. This is horrible. Oh man, Condemned 2. Somewhere along the course of its development in its teenage years, it tripped and fell into Spencer's gifts and rolled out with shaggy bangs and wearing a short-sleeved shirt over a long-sleeved shirt. And it just never really recovered. I feel like a disappointed parent comparing Condemned 2 to its brother. Why can't you be more like Condemned 1? You're stuck in this rebellious phase, and I'm just really disappointed. Condemned 2 just shouts back that it's not just a phase and this is who it's always been. It slams its door and angrily knocks back a shot of Everclear that it stole from Rite Aid. There's an undeniable angst here, but it's aimless and it's toothless. It wants to be hard and mean-spirited, but it's not nearly transgressive enough.
Hey, screw you!
It wants to be gritty and violent, but it's not too violent and it's never bloody enough. It wants to be horrific, but it has no idea how to establish tension. It wants to tell a complex story of conspiracies and cults, but it's only like 5 hours long with filler missions and reused assets from the first game. There's a lot that Condemned 2 wants to be, but it actually accomplishes very few of those things. It's like the devs looked at how stripped back the first game was and thought the bigger the better, right? But they didn't really make it bigger, and they just threw in a lot of disparate systems and a story that's equally as half-baked as the first one.
Doesn't mean dick to me.
Of everything that will jump out as different from Condemned 1, it's probably the tone, right? Condemned 2 opted to shed its slow burn thriller aesthetic for that of something like anger and impulse. It's in your face, it's loud, it's drunk most of the time. It's loud, where Condemned 1 was quiet. It's overwritten where Condemned 1 was underwritten, and it's bloated where Condemned 1 was thin. So in theory, I like this escalation, right? It's a natural progression of what we experienced in the first game. The world is getting worse. Our hero has lost faith and has fallen, and the enemy is winning, right? But the game squanders that opportunity with weak story and characters and terrible pacing and unbalanced gameplay. There's still something here, right? A vestige of the world that we saw in the first game. Drug-fueled maniacs crawl through abandoned tenements like rats, and streets overflow with trash, and the city is gripped in constant, unending battle against a rising crime wave that feels all-consuming. Condemned 2 is at its best when I'm having a rock fight with the crazy guy across the street in between shotgunning bottles of Fireball, or when I'm scavenging for a functioning bludgeoning tool for the dude in his whitey-tighties that just jumped out of the wall. At the end of the day, I think I just have less to say about this one, because in between those moments of grimy zaniness, Condemned 2 forgets most of what worked in the first game.
I said shut up!
So at least, I guess the combat feels good. Well, mostly good. The bones are good, but it doesn't really work in the game. It's still a brawler, for sure. Our disgraced SCU investigator Ethan Thomas is angrier than ever, and this time comes equipped with bare-knuckle brawling skills, combos, and combo points, and environmental finishers and shit. It's a big step up from the simple block parry system that came before it. The problem is that there's very little flow to the combat. You have combos you can do, sure, but most of them don't seem to do much more damage, and the thugs that you're fighting react the same to a jab as they do to a combo finisher. Everyone recoils the same, and you can almost never get 2 consecutive hits in without having to block or parry first, regardless of what weapon you use or what combo you hit them with. There's a momentum that's just missing. And despite having different combos, you never need to change your tactics for any of the normal thugs. And the boss-ish enemies are all mechanic-based, so you don't really fight them normally anyway. The problem is that they haven't given the enemies any tools that they didn't have in the first game. Like, virtually none. They run in and do the same wild swings and go grab new weapons when there's breaks, and that's kind of it. Ethan's power level has increased drastically here, and the enemies have stayed the same. Even playing through the game on hard, it often feels way too easy, and the enemy's AI just feels kind of worse than it did in the first game. They just sort of run at you head on. They never really seem to reposition or break line of sight to get the drop on you. The fights never feel like they go anywhere. You just sort of exchange blows until it's over. There's no downtime or frantic scrambling to reposition or grab a new weapon. Now, Condemned's combat was no shining star, of course, in the first one, but man, there was something to it. You had this pulse to it. You'd sometimes lose sight of enemies in a brawl, or one of them would pop out from around a corner or cast their weapon aside and jump on you. Sometimes someone would pull some iron out and lay down a hail of bullets at whoever was unlucky enough to get in the way, right? Nothing like that happens here, save for a few exceptions like a chaotic brawl on the train tracks or a criminal incursion into an art museum. Everything feels so static and self-contained. The fights here go so fast, nothing ever happens in them. I'm surprised with how much shit they throw into the game. They made very little visible changes to the way that enemies fight. With how few tools the enemies have been given, it's basically unnecessary to use any of Ethan's new combos, and the grapple moves that you can use are actually way more dangerous for you than it is deadly for them. You're locked into these little QTE animations, but you're not invulnerable to damage. So if you accidentally trigger them, which, like, let's be real, it's the only time you'll use them, you're still getting pummeled by the other guys around you and you can't do anything about it. These enemies are not difficult to kill. These grapple moves are total overkill and only serve to break down the already clunky pacing of the fights further, even if animation-wise they are fun to watch. I don't know, man, these things just don't work. You don't need to save up these moves for a last-ditch attempt to survive a fight or build up your combo points to unleash a desperate finisher to take down like a big threat. They're not tied into the gameplay in any meaningful way. I don't know, they're just kind of there. You'll end up doing them pretty frequently because you accidentally trigger them once you have this passive resource built up. I don't know, it's tedious and it's lame. The weapons too, man, I don't know, they just don't feel right. Admittedly, you have a nice suite though. There's the standard pipes and boards, wrenches and baseball bats, as well as some goofy ones like this candy cane buzzsaw blade thing. Like, the one-handed weapons feel okay, quick swings and decent feedback, punctuated by the deep boom of a combo finisher. But the heavy weapons, they just don't feel good at all. They're too fast and not nearly enough oomph behind each swing. The number of times a thug instantly bounces back from a baseball bat to the dome is just astounding. Unlike in the first game, your ability to parry isn't determined by the speed of the weapon, so you're really just trading a larger weapon for swing speed, and I guess damage, though you could have fooled me. Weapons do have a durability system now, which is one of the main criticisms I had of Condemned 1. I like this a lot. Weapons break after a few good kills, forcing you to scavenge around for a replacement. The urgency of combat has always been what I've liked most about these games, how brutal and unstrategic it's supposed to be, how messy and improvisational. So when your 2x4 smashes to splinters over a maniac's head and you reach for the nearest pipe wrench or lead pipe, it feels good. It feels like these weapons last just long enough to grow attached to them, right? Get the feel and the hang of a used toilet seat versus a metal pipe, but short enough that you find yourself regularly swapping them out of necessity. I like that. And with how many different weapons you'll be coming across, it feels like a good balance. And it's one of the few things that Condemned 2 does really well. Weapons, good job. Oh, and the throwing. Oh man, the throwing. So you can throw your weapons now, and I just can't get enough of this. The tactile and auditory feedback that a 2-foot piece of track lighting makes when it connects to a dude's dome is just perfect. I fully accept that this is way less efficient than just fighting, but I don't care. I just want to chuck every weapon I come across. Hell, I'll throw the guns. I just don't care. It's too much fun. Really, really good addition to the game. There's also way more firearms in this game, and they're found just so much more often. Sometimes you start a level with one, other times you find them in these hilarious little FBI lockers found around the map. Just a fully loaded shotgun sitting there for anybody to grab. You've got mostly everything from the first one. Handguns and shotguns and rifles. Nothing really to note here aside from a special Colt crossbow thing that you only see a couple times. The guns, they're whatever. They don't feel rare at all like they did in the first game, but they're just as, if not more powerful than before. Now with the ability to aim down sights, it can easily one-shot any thug with a well-placed bullet to the brain. And they have this really funny mechanic where Ethan needs to drink regularly to calm his nerves or else his aim is super shaky. It's funny, and admittedly, it makes your guns way less usable. That is until Ethan conquers his intense alcoholism by beating the shit out of his alcohol demon, and then those shakes aren't a problem anymore. But it's a nice idea while it lasts. Yeah, so the guns are okay. Not great, but then you have levels where you only fight other guys with guns, and this is where Condemned 2 is just really bad. So through the story, which we'll get to, Ethan is hunted by these SCU operative dudes, right? Full tactical gear and automatic weapons, and with apparently just as much combat training as the drug addicts that you've been fighting up until that point. There are a couple levels where these are the only guys that you fight, and Condemned just becomes a shooter, and it's really bad. The weapons don't feel that great to shoot, and even after Ethan's just had a drink, the lack of oomph from the first game and combined with the brain dead AI, it just feels like you're shooting dummies. It just becomes gunning down these soldiers as they sprint into your bullets, collecting their ammo and moving on. There's never any tension or pacing to these gunfights, and it really pulls the game away from what it does best. I liked the fights in Condemned 1 because they felt urgent and desperate. It's either you or them and nothing but a busted piece of rebar in your hand to win that fight. It really felt like the dudes you went up against just wanted you dead. And it's hard to feel that when you're gunning down waves of identical looking tactical guys who, according to the lore, aren't supposed to be crazed like the other guys that you've been fighting. So shouldn't they be smarter? Shouldn't they be better equipped? You're being outmatched by a homeless alcoholic who hasn't slept in a year. Thankfully, it's only a couple levels that are like this, but in a game that already feels way too short, it's just too many. Okay, outside of the soldiers, there's only a couple new enemies to fight. There are a few new variations of the standard maniacs from the first one in the flavor of rioters or bums with metal pieces grafted onto their faces or big buff dudes with chains wrapped around their hands, but they feel mostly identical to fight. The big guys with the chains are probably the most impressive. They're huge and they move fast and attack even faster. These are really the only guys that pressure you or force you to engage in a meaningful way, and I like them. They're cool. There are some special cult enemies in the late game, but they don't really offer anything unique. Just use a specific ability on them and then you beat them down like the rest. There is one really weird addition in the form of these animated baby doll things. They're stitched together and stumble around, exploding if you let them get too close. You can kick them over to safely dispatch them, and they bleed, I think, when you hit them? Like, what are these things? Are they robots? If so, who made them? They're just so corny and out of nowhere and never seen outside of one level. I don't know, the world of Bloodshot, it doesn't seem to operate on any internal logic. It just sort of does what it wants. So even with the couple new additions to the game, you have essentially the exact same enemies from the first one. It all just adds up to feeling pretty uneven. The fights are too fast, the enemies are too uninteresting, and nothing rises to match Ethan's new suite of abilities. Things were stripped back in Condemned 1, right? You could make an argument that it was too minimalist, and I wouldn't disagree with you, but there's something that's lost in all of this noise here. The detective stuff in Condemned 1 was far too bare and really functioned as nothing more than pressing X to have Rosa, your forensic contact, deliver exposition to you and tell you the importance of the clues that you're finding, right? But in Bloodshot, you're far more interactive. I'm actually really surprised at how good this is. You have to carefully examine your environment and answer questions about what you see, right? What kind of wound is it? Was the body dragged? Can you examine the body and give an accurate description of what you're seeing? Sometimes it's determining if a body was dragged or if they crawled based on the blood smear, right? Other times it's piecing together environmental information to determine a location or solve a code puzzle. It's really good stuff. Your responses matter and you're actually graded on accuracy and just sort of sensibility of your responses. While the end result is always the same, and you can never fail out of these, Rosa might come up with more insightful information based on how you report to her. I really like this a lot. Sometimes you can even ask questions based on what other characters have said to you, and repeating that information accurately actually matters. You better pay attention. There's one I really like where you're trying to determine what area of a factory you're in. So you find a map of the types of production vats in the room, and you tally up the count and tell the dude who's trying to
I
help
see
you.
4 Type A tanks, 2 Type B tanks, and a bunch of other factory stuff.
Sounds like the factory's mixing facility.
You have a couple more tools this time as well. One of them is a GPS map, which might go down as one of the most useless tools in any game ever. The levels are so linear that you never need it, and the readout on the thing is far from helpful. You've also got returning tools like the UV light and the spectrometer. And just like the first game, the UV light leads to some of the more tense moments as you turn off your flashlight and scan the ground for a trail only to get jumped from the shadows, right? I love this. I really love this, and it's my single favorite part of the game. You get a couple of them every level, and it's great to see Ethan actually investigating and contributing equally in solving these puzzles. Despite being shit-faced the entire game, he feels way more like a detective than he did in the first game. You're graded on all of this, which contributes to your overall ranking from level to level, from bronze to gold. Each rank comes with an unlockable, with gold giving the biggest bonus. These unlocks last the remainder of the game, and they are really powerful, but the power is determined by what rank you get. Like, you'll always get the taser, but gold might give you 4 shots and bronze might give you 2. It's weird because outside of just replaying that level for a better score, there's no way for you to change it later on, so you're just sort of stuck with whatever you get for the rest of the game. It's not great. But again, these bonuses are strong and further reinforce the power differential from Ethan to the enemies he's facing. It's kind of crazy. One unlock gives you a holster so you can carry a backup firearm, and it's just silly. We really didn't need to make this game any easier. So yeah, this all just sort of piles onto the game while everything around stays the same. The levels don't get harder and new threats are never really introduced that demand different strats or demand functionality of any of the unlockables. So you just keep getting stronger, which makes the game easier and overall way less scary. You just kind of steamroll through these levels, and that seems due, at least in part, because the game doesn't want you sticking around for very long. The first couple levels are great, much like Condemned 1. You're picking your way through decrepit buildings, all torn down rooms and flipped over furniture, any number of crazy dudes climbing through the walls, right? You get a little time to explore, but you're pushed forward at a pretty good pace. There are a few levels that feel at home in this game, be it in the back alleys of the intro level or the ruined bowling alley of the Trenton district. But then you have the giant doll factory, which just feels like a downgrade from that level Bart's department store from the first game. With a goofy looking evil doll making lollipop girl, they really want Bloodshot to be edgy and dark, but it's just silly. There's a museum level where looters clash with security guards, and that's fun for all the medieval weaponry that you can play around with, but it just feels wrong. It's a totally sanitary environment that just feels way out of place. It starts off strong in the back alley in the garage and a murder scene, but it just becomes plain. The same goes for the wintry mountainside cabin full of tactical military dudes. Both of these levels are too far removed from the brooding violence in the urban environments. There's also a giant bear that chases you around. I don't know, man. The levels in Condemned 1 had this great loneliness to them. You felt eaten up by these decayed old buildings and the forgotten subway systems. But here it just feels like you're plopped into these levels and just sent on your way. And then there's this shit. Like, what is this? What is happening? It's horrific, and not in a good way. They slather on so many distorted filters and coat everything in this black goo that seems to suck up light like the Navidson house. On one hand, I appreciate just how unapologetically awful they made these hallucination sections, and on the other hand, I hate them because of how unapologetically awful they made these hallucination sections. I can't tell what the hell is going on. Is it supposed to be a future where the cult wins? Is this the way the world is going to look? I mean, okay, that's pretty awful and we want to avoid that, but I just don't know. These parts are never explained outside of, oh, it was just a bad dream, and they're just really, really awful. And it keeps going. There's stuff like this scene, and it's just, Man, I don't know.
What to look for?
I mean, there's something that I like about these levels, though, especially in the first level. As you weave through these back alleys, you notice this same black goo is seeping out of the buildings, pouring out of the windows, and gunking up all the old pipes. It's neat because it starts out kind of subtle, and you don't really notice until suddenly all the buildings around you are covered in this stuff. It's nice. It's nightmarish and hopeless, and it sets a strong tone for the start of the game. They just do so little with it. And the future scenes that feature it are just the worst, man.
Ration, Mr. Thomas.
And then there's just nothing to like about the last couple levels. A junk barge and a man-made peninsula, it's just so unexciting to me. It's the end of the game. Give me the seediest, darkest place, the remnants of a civilization, a place so overtaken by this sadistic influence that it's almost cannibalized by it, right? Almost post-apocalyptic, and how ruinous it is. Like, let's really see what happens to this city now that the cult's influences spread far and wide. Hell, despite how terrible they are, you were kind of onto something with those hallucination sections. But this is all we get? I don't know, man, it just feels off, anticlimactic, and underdeveloped on its premise. Oh god, let's talk about the story. So I'm gonna assume you're caught up on the story from the first game as to not retread too much old ground. You can watch my video on it. So Ethan Thomas, our FBI SCU investigator guy from the first game, he's a raging alcoholic now, haunted by the demons of his last investigation, and having lost faith in the systems that he served, he wanders the city just beating the shit out of random homeless people, which, to be fair, isn't too different than his behavior from the first game. But this time he's just really, really angry about it. And I love this. I love that they did something different with Ethan. In the last game, he was stoic and underwritten, largely ineffectual in the scheme of the story, right? But in Bloodshot, he's engaged, he's brooding, he's edgy and violent. The Serial Killer X investigation has left him with questions and fear, and the takeaway here is that he hasn't succumbed to the same madness as the other violent thugs rampaging around, but he's still consumed by that hate that Malcolm Van Horn warned him about at the end of the first game. He lost at the end of Condemned, and it's refreshing to see such a bold development for a character. I mean, just look at this dude. He looks like shit.
All right.
This is not a leading man right here. I love it. So the setup is very good, right? It's a shame that just nothing ever comes of it. After reconnecting with Rosa, it's like Ethan was just away for the weekend. Not like he'd vanished for a year after having gone through a deeply traumatic case together. Nothing is mentioned of his appearance or what he's been up to, and Rosa seems pretty indifferent to him throughout the game. Yeah, I mean, he's called the drunk a few times, and he reiterates that now he's no longer an agent, but otherwise the characterization is pretty thin. He's just pissed off. Oh, God, he's also haunted by a white masked version of himself who taunts him, but also kind of helps him along. He only appears a few times and is ultimately vanquished along with Ethan's alcoholism via a baseball bat to the head. Boy, he kicked that habit quick. What's one 11-month bender, right? Or at least we think he's vanquished until we're given this absolute gem of a line.
I thought I killed you. I represent all your demons, Ethan. Alcohol was just one of them.
Good God. So, yeah, he's angry, he's violent, he wants to rage, and his drinking is not an issue.
My drinking is not an issue.
Still, I like Ethan, and I like it when he drops the act sometimes and puts on his little detective hat and he gets into it. He's simultaneously inward and aggressive, and I take a character like that over the cardboard cutout we got in the first game any day. Okay, so Rosa received a distress voicemail from Malcolm Van Horn from the first game, and they pretty quickly drag Ethan out of the ditch he's living in and rope him into helping figure out what's going on. Ethan, for his part, is a little annoyed but not really reluctant. Rosa is accompanied by this dude named Dorlin, who is immediately just a bad guy, full stop. Like, come on. Ethan also notices this, just look at him. They find that Malcolm has been brutally murdered and had his vocal cords removed. Similar eyes written on the wall that we've seen in the first game. Getting Malcolm's body back to SCU forensics, they find that he had the same deformity in his chest that Ethan has. They give Ethan an x-ray to learn about what's going on with his chest, as the one that they found in his personnel file in the first game was all redacted. Ethan meets with SCU director Farrell, a minor antagonist from the first game, who explains that he's been trying to protect Ethan over the course of this investigation. Without too much ceremony, they're soon on their way to investigate another murder, that of the mayor of Metro, Rachel Mars. On her body, they find metal pieces that have been removed, as well as a clear calling card from SKX, the target of Ethan's last investigation, right? Why he left a signed little card here, I don't know. Rosa and Ethan speculate and soon confirm that SKX might actually be alive, having been nursed back to health from his uncle Malcolm, only to ultimately kill him and Mayor Mars. This leads Ethan to investigate Malcolm's last known location of a remote cabin where, after gunning down dozens of these SCU tactical dudes who also show up at the exact same time, we find Malcolm's last will and testament left for Ethan in hopes of him finding it. I mean, sure. This is funny because Malcolm didn't leave any clue for Ethan to follow to uncover this. It was only after examining his corpse that Rosa found traces of poop from deer that only reside in that area of the woods. I don't know. Maybe Malcolm just wasn't able to get the clue out to Ethan before he died, but it's just funny. Here we learn that Ethan's parents, along with Malcolm, were members of the Oro, a world domination cult based around sonic abilities, right? Most of this was vaguely established in the first game, but now we can finally put a name to it. It's short for Oro Invictus, which means invincible voice. They've been around forever and been slowly influencing the world and inching towards their goals, okay? Pretty standard conspiracy cult stuff. Condemned 1 sets up a lot of questions, and Bloodshot just straight up tells you the answers in the most uninteresting ways.
I represent all your demons, Ethan.
We figured as much about Malcolm, right? But Ethan's parents is news. News that Ethan doesn't have anything to say about. It's mentioned in the first game that Malcolm knew Ethan's father, but that's it. This revelation is sort of meaningless, as outside of these 2 instances across the games, Ethan's life and parents have played virtually no part. It's lame. So Malcolm, along with Ethan's parents, defected from the Oro, and they were hunted down for it. It's unclear how Malcolm managed to avoid the same fate. Since then, the Oro have increased in power, as has Ethan, and they've been monitoring him throughout his career, wary of his innate ability, which they view as a threat. So Malcolm confirms that Leland, SKX, is trying to join the Oro now. Right around this time, they find out that SKX has been captured and he's being held on a transport van. Okay, very convenient. On the way there, Rosa forgets everything that happened in the first game.
I mean, the city is crumbling all around us. Riots, fires, murders, and now this? What's going on?
Okay, so eventually Ethan gets a moment alone with SKX and he learns that he killed Leland and Mayor Mars to better understand how the Oro work, right? To get closer to them, as they were both members of this cult. We pretty much already figured all this out. SKX escapes. That's it. Chasing him through an abandoned bowling alley, Ethan finds his list of victims on a projection screen. Next target is Farrell and another guy named Magic Man. And, oh god, we'll talk about Magic Man in a second. So Ethan finds SKX's serial killer lair, and it's actually really neat. He's been kidnapping and operating on local homeless folks, locking them up in these electrified makeshift cages and grafting on metal pieces to their bodies in hopes of understanding the Oro's secrets. It's gritty and it's grotesque, and I like it. Even if it's all done in a not so clever reuse of the school level from the first game, but whatever, I like it. So that bad guy I talked about, Dorlin, shows up and, surprise, surprise, reveals himself to be involved with the Oro, and he's trying to eliminate Farrell and Ethan. Farrell uses some kind of Oro ability to unlock Ethan's ability to use this sonic scream, which hilariously causes Farrell's head to pop like a balloon. I don't know if that was intended. SKX saves Ethan and calls him a future investment for a future game that we're never going to play. And that's like the end of the interesting stuff in Bloodshot. From this point on, it's just kind of bad. Up until this point, there were some nice moments together, right? The hotel and the junkies, the back alleys and the little investigative bits that you do, all of that goes away. Ethan defeats his literal alcohol demon and goes through an old theater, which is like 2 rooms and a boss fight. God, the game just really starts falling apart. So you're looking for this Magic Man, a guy on SKX's list. Ethan knows him somehow, but who is this guy? He teleports around the room and he has these assistant girls who are pinned up who then come back to life. It's just so random. We never see anything like this outside of this segment, and it seems like it's stitched together from an abandoned plot line. It's really weird. So this dude also was in the Oro and left, and yet he also tries to kill Ethan despite telling him that he's considered to be this remedy to the cult. Ethan's not able to get much more information out of him, but when pressed, he gives up where he can find the cult itself on this peninsula, a man-made thing out in the waters around the city. And then he just disappears. I don't know, man. Nothing matters from this point on. Just like Ethan here gliding over the air above the orchestra pit. All right, we're going to speed it up here. On the way to the peninsula, Rosa gets scared of Ethan's ability. Ethan gets hurt, and then they make up. It's a needless detour, and nothing of importance happens. So Ethan fights through the peninsula, destroying Oro equipment that's just kind of sitting out there in the open for anyone to see. They appear to be generators emitting the sounds that are affecting the city. You may not fix the whole problem by destroying these, but it's a start. You meet a couple new Oro enemies here, which are cool to look at, but all you need to do is use Ethan's sonic ability to be able to get close to them, and then they function just like any other thug. Hey, where are the cool stick fighting guys from Condemned 1? I miss those guys. And this whole area is a bummer. You don't at all get the impression that this is some all-powerful secretive cult that's slowly taking over the world. Their main hideout looks like one big power transformer setup in a slightly futuristic looking building grafted onto a bunch of old boats. It's weird and cobbled together, and it doesn't matter. We're almost out of here. So Dorlin is here to give total cornball bad guy exposition without really saying anything. He's the big bad, but all he can really do is generate a slightly irritating aura of sound around him. He's evil. They fight. Ethan wins.
Puppet like everyone else.
At the end, Ethan digs in for more information that Dorlin doesn't have. Like maybe there's an even bigger bad out there that Dorlin answers to, but we've been given literally no clues to that, and it speaks more to the writers saying, we literally don't have a bigger story written than ominous foreshadowing. Ethan escapes and takes a nap, and the president has a heart attack when he learns that the remedy is among them. So Ethan is the key to dismantling the cult, right? He's their big bad, and it seems like that there's not much they can do about it, signaling the end and likely downfall of the Oro, right? Yet at the same time, there's a post-credit scene that shows SKX finally joining the Oro, so who knows? And that's it. That's all the Condemned we get, and all that we're likely ever going to get. I guess the ending could be read that the cult is finished now that Ethan is on the case and that they've been outed to the public through the debacle with Dorlin and the SCU, but to me it reads more like they were planning to do more with the series and it just didn't happen. And that's it, folks. Condemned 2 had a lot to hone in and iterate on, and it did that. It just kind of missed the mark. We traded a lonely, intense atmosphere for loud and toothless edginess. We traded an underdeveloped story for a rushed and heavy-handed one that still feels underdeveloped. Condemned 1 had some strengths, right, in its lonely atmosphere and its stripped back and desperate brawls. The story was obviously unfinished there, but it at least cleared the room for creepy vibes, right? Condemned 2 is just too loud. It absolutely nails the detective gameplay, which was a big sore spot in the first one, but it also dials up everything else. It feels overstuffed for how short it is. I'm bummed about this game. It's likely that this is the last we're going to see of the series, short of some miracle revival. Finishing Bloodshot, I feel a lot like how I felt with the first game. There's some heart in there, and I wish it could have just had more time or a clearer vision or something. It's got this thing called Bloodshot Fight Club, and it's just so lame. I'm sorry, this shit sucks. It's a few bite-sized levels with some gimmicks attached, right? Kill as many thugs as you can, or protect the cops, or run around the apple orchard level from the first game, just kicking around the baby dolls. You'll play these things one time and then move on. They add nothing of value, and they just take up space. It's a shame. There was also this whole multiplayer component to the game too, but I remember it at the time feeling half-baked and disappointing, and that thing has long since ended, and all that's left is a stitched-together campaign that unfortunately left the series in permanent stasis.
I thought I killed you. I represent all your demons, Ethan. Alcohol was just one of them.